Where and how quality control operates. The complexity of quality control depends on the size of company and the kind of products it is handling. A merchant sending ice fillets to retailers and fryers will require much less sophisticated quality control than a large firm making high price, elaborately prepared frozen dishes. However, four main stages at which quality control is applied can be identified. First is the drawing up a product specification, inspecting of testing raw material, processing, and then inspecting of testing finished products. Stage 1 is primarily the responsibility of the customer, but it may be necessary for quality control staff to give advice in the drafting. Where there is no specific customer, it is useful to write a specification in collaboration with people in the company who are familiar with what the customer may require. For example, sales or marketing staff. Once the product specification is available, the supplier can set up the processing line and arrange supplies of raw material. And the second one is the next job of the quality controller is to inspect and, if necessary, test the raw material. The quality aspects that need checking are usually evident from the product specification, but nevertheless, they should be written as a separate raw material specification, preferably after consultation with the buyer. The quality of the raw material may be affected with the process, and this must be allowed for in the specification. For example, freshness may be lower during the process, and the freshness quality of the raw material will therefore need to be higher than that specified for the product. Stage 3 involves the monitoring the process at points where the quality controller or fish technologist shows quality may be affected. Expert advice may be on choosing these points. Much of the information given in the advisory notes in this series can help the quality controller in his choice of checkpoints and the kind of measurements to be made. The last stage involves the checking the product to make sure it meets the product specification. What is written in the specification defines the limits of quality control. It is normally wasteful to check aspects in which the customer is interested or that are not covered by legislation. Occasionally, extra checking may be justified if it creates worthwhile extra confidence in the product of its manufacturer. But not all steps in the process need to be described in a process specification, since not all are important in meeting the product specification. Processing factors that most affect quality in the fish industry are the time, the temperature, contamination, damage or deterioration, hygiene and sanitation, equipment and methods, packing for product appeal, correctness of feel. Time. As we all know, fish is so or highly perishable. It is important that it be processed quickly. Systematic checks must be made on the time fish takes to pass through the process, and it is useful to prepare a schedule of permitted times. The rate of spoilage of wet fish at different temperatures is known accurately. Thus, it is impossible to specify maximum allowable times in order to keep spoilage to a permitted level. For example, it might be specified that fish of the market should not be iced back for more than 24 hours, or that the interval between packing fillets at normal factory temperature and freezing them should not be longer than 1 hour. So as you can see, tungod kay ang isda kay dali siya madubok, dali siya madaot, importante gid siya nga ang iyang oras sa exposure should be controlled or should be limited. Kay kinahanglan gid siya nga after nga nimo na catch, so kinahanglan nimo siyang ipaagi dayon sa freezing or pagbutang og ice para nimo siya ma preserve ang iyaang quality. Kay certain rise of temperature could be a threat sa iyaang quality, sa iyang freshness. So here, as you can see, na ay mga klase-klase sa mga fishery products nga butangan si og ice para ma-preserve, and the second picture shows that a fish has been placed inside a container and has been freeze. So freezing times can be important to quality maintenance and often need to be specified. In the same way, maximum cold storage times for a raw material or finished product may be stated, since fish deteriorate slowly even at low temperature. So gamit kaayo ang kabugnawon tungod kay makatabang siya para hinay-hinay ang deterioration sa isda or sa imong fishery product. Measurement and control of operation time is straightforward. Equipment like freezers or retorts can be controlled by alarm clocks, time switches, or more complex program systems. So dili na mosulod ang mga gigamit nga mga katong mga dagkong freezers, most especially sa mga dagkong nga mga factories. Second one is the temperature. Wet fish should be held as closely as possible to 0 degrees Celsius throughout handling, processing, and distribution in order to reduce spoilage to a minimum. Good practice when handling wet fish is dealt with in detail in several notes in this series. Temperatures of freezing, cold storage, drying, smoking, cooking, and heat processing may have to be stated in a process specification. Ano siya? Nahanag ang temperatura 0 or negative degrees Celsius para ma-preserve nimo ang isda or mga fishery products. The one that needs to be considered is the contamination or the contaminants. The product can be contaminated in a number of ways during processing. For example, by dirt, mga hugaw, scales, or mga imbis, bones, bukog, blood, dugo, water, contaminated water, polluted water, lubricating oil, unpleasant odors and flavors, and hair. The process specification should detail the main methods of avoiding contamination. For example, the wearing of protective clothing. Much of what needs to be specified under this heading is a matter of common sense and experience. So, makita nato diri nga mga different sources of contamination. Pwede siya sa polluted water, pwede siya og mga microbes, pwede siya sa gikan sa mga intestines, so most probably mga parasites. Then sa time of catching, sa panahon sa imong pagkuan, posible there mo ang mga nadiha ang contaminants. Pwede siya og types of fish spoilage na microbial, physiological, and biochemical. So as you can observe sa nakita nato nga sa mga factories, makita gid nimo nga gasutin sila mga personal protective gears, mga equipments, mga cover sa ilang lawas para walay part sa ilang body o sa ilang skin, sa ilang hair nga mogawas para ma-preserve nila or ma-avoid nila ang contamination dito sa food. Kay di ba it could be a threat to the consumers, to the buyer, o mas guba pod ang ilang kalidad sa ilang produkto. Then the damage or deterioration. A wide range of protective measures against damage or deterioration come under this head. For example, measures designed to prevent the fish being trodden or knocked, bruised, pierced with hooks, bent while stiff in rigor, or squashed. Protection against drying or freezer burn by humidity control, glazing, or suitable packaging may be specified. Instructions about heat sealing of packs may be detailed here, and the use of vacuum packing may be specified to reduce oxidative rancidity. So, there are certain measures kay gi-observe para malikay nato ang damage o o deterioration sa atong mga fishery products. Kay syempre, they are very vulnerable, most especially if gikan pa siya sa pagkuha, hantod na sa pagdala dito sa factory, asa siya dito i-process. Dayon, para pud matabangan nga malikayan ang deterioration sa imong fishery product, natay mga permitted additives and their manner of use might be specified. For example, antioxidants to prevent deterioration and combustion of fish meal, or polyphosphates to prevent drip loss is repack wet fish. So, mga gigamit nga mga certain like either natural or synthetic nga mga additives para matabangan nga ma-preserve ang isda. Then, conditions of storage of raw material or product may also be controlled under this head. Dayon, ato na ta sa hygiene and sanitation. Fish is a food and must be handled hygienically. Muna siya pinaka basic nga nung kinahanglan nato nga nagbubutag hygiene and sanitation sa atong mga fishery products tungod kay ang isda sa kapagkaon. So kinahanglan nato siya nga limpyo ang atong pagpreparar ni ana para safe siya nga maabot sa atong mga lamisa sa ato ang tiyan. If hygiene is not dealt with as a separate management function, then appropriate measures should be written in the process specification. Equipment and methods. Rather than specify how the job should be done, it is sometimes simpler to specify the equipment that will do it. For example, a deboning machine that produces material of the required quality or a labeling machine that affixes labels of the right type may be easier to specify than the job to be done. So, sa equipments and methods, diri mo sulod tong mga dagko kay mga freezers, nga dito nimo ibutang para ma-preserve ang mga fishery products. Makita nimo dito sa mga deboning machines, pagkuha sa mga bone sa isda, ding naa po dito ang kanang magbutag label. Makita nato sa mga factories, yung mga machines nga ilang gigamit para matabangan nila nga mas mahimog easier o more convenient ang ilang trabaho, faster ang ilang trabaho. A certain type of freezer, for example, may be specified to ensure the freezing is done in the required manner. But where the equipment can be used in several ways, it may be necessary to specify exactly how it should be used. For example, it is usually necessary to specify the manner of loading and freezing time for each product in an air blast freezer or the brine strength and product residence time in a continuous briner. So, gahatag siya example sa mga klase-klase nga mga machines or equipments and methods na gigamit para sa processing sa imuang fishery products o para ma-ensure ang kalidad sa imuang produkto. Then packing for product appeal. One thing I learned nga sa pila ka years na namong namaligya og mga pagkaon og kuan is ang importansya sa packing. Kay di ba if magbaligya ta ato ibaligya to mga products, it should be kanang guhapa ang imong pagka-pack ani para pag one glance sa mga customer kaning atong mata is very judgmental. So one glance sa mga customer, if makuha na nila, makot na nimo ang ilaang pananaw sa imong produkto nga ala pa kay siya og kuan packing pasabot ani lami na yung produkto ingon ana. So the eye appeal and finish of the product is important, and the process specification should cover these aspects. For example, instructions to cut and trim neatly and to arrange the fish attractively on the pack will help to ensure the product is displayed to the best advantage. So kanang mga customer kana ilang mga mata kuan kay na siya kanang mausisa mutan-aw na sila if limpyo ba ning kuan pagkatrabaho aning mga isda nga ilang gibaligya kaning finished product limpyo ba ni wala pa may mga himbis na hibilin ani. Then ilaan na silang tan-awon pod ang arrangement or organization sa imuang mga baligya, wa ba ni gawakat, bahig ba ni, kay if bahig imong baligya it means nga attractive na sidya. Then filling the pack with the right number, size, and weight of fish. Syempre, kung na organization or bahig, dapat organize pod ang gidakon, dapat puro pariha or pariha gyud. Kinahanglan nga ang kadaghanon pariha para di mo ingon ang imong kuan og nganong maning iya adaghan kani ako ag gamay, di ba? Ingon ana. Then, size and weight of fish. So, if mamalikya ka, dapat see to it nga naa nimo gibutang ang equilibrium sa weight, sa kuan dapat for example, if pareha ang prices, dapat uniform po dapat ang kabug-aton kakuan para ang customer dili pud matingala or dili pud kanang tawag ani di pud mo reklamo nganong gamayaran ni ako nya iya adaghan niya pareha may gibayaran ingon ana bitaw nga thought. And the manner of labeling and stapling can be specified under this heading. Kaning labeling yun pod usa sa mga kuan, wow lami lagi ni siya uguan kanang design aning ya ang kuan ya ang labeling napoy sa stapling or kanang pag-ensure nimo nga natarong og seal imong produkto. Syempre pagkaon na kinahanglan nga ma-assure nimo imong mga customer nga kanang imo ang produkto is correctly sealed or tarong ang iya ang pagkuan pagsirado ingon ana para ma-ensure nga kalidad gina imong produkto, limpyo gina imong produkto, di ba? Yield and efficiency. The yield of edible product from raw fish and the efficiency of the process are important factors affecting profitability, and responsibility for this in the larger firms usually falls on production and method study staff. But in small firms, the job may conveniently be combined with quality control. Maximum yield and high efficiency depend on the close supervision of such things as skill of filters and other hand workers, incentive schemes, machine settings, and weight changes during processing due to drying, drip loss, water absorption, uptake of salt, polysulfate, and cooking oil. So, sa akong in my own understanding, ang yield and efficiency or ang output, ang outcome sa imong produkto if kuan ba siya kanang click ba siya sa mga customer, sa mga mupalalit is gadepende na sa imong mga workers. Syempre, ang gagamaan na tan-awon nimo if kuan ba sila, productive ba sila? Unya, mahimo po na sila productive kung sakto imong sweldo, ang monetization, ang imo ang incentive dito mosulod ang paghatag nimo incentive or sweldo sa imong mga kuan or mga gifts sa imong mga workers usa man na sa drive nila para magtarong sila og trabaho. And then ang makatabang nila aron mas mapadala ila ang trabaho, mas mapapaspas ilang trabaho, mas sayon ilang trabaho is ang mga machineries or ang mga equipments nga gigamit sa imong factory. Like for example, dire makita nimo nga naay mga hearing system, naay mga belt dip glazer, waterfall glazer, naay mga fish header, salmon header, may nana mga deboning machine, may nana. Muna siya mga factors nga posible ang makatabang o makaapekto sa sa yield and efficiency sa outcome sa imong product. Then, inspection of raw material and product. Methods of inspecting and testing quality are of two main points: sensory or organoleptic test and instrumental and chemical test. The first type employs only the human senses of sight, smell, taste, touch, and touch. Moto siya ang katong sensory method. Para aning gibuhat aning first picture nga na iyang gisimhutan gamit ang ang nose. Dadyon iyang gi-check kani ilang gi-check ang kuan ang kanang lawas sa isda, if okay ba, if di ba baho, if wala ba yung mga issues. And then whereas the second employs instruments like thermometers and chemical apparatus which are largely independent of human responses. So, diri sa chemical test, mas makaingon ta nga mas accurate ang iyang mahatag nga result tungod kay hingagi man siya mga certain laboratory test, mga unsa pa diha nga mga test, mga chemical test. So, sensor methods have disadvantages. For example, the results can be variable and the operator may be subject to outside influences and fatigue. Kay diri magud po sa sensory pwede og bias ang mo check or makakos siya og health problems most especially kay for example baho ng imong isda nya mosimhot ana ng imo ang kanang inspector, syempre makaapekto na sa iya ang health. So outside influences and fatigue dira mosulod. Then na nagita sa last part, freshness is the most important quality factor in for the consumer. Diba, as consumer, every one of us kay nahimog consumer, atong yung pangitan is kanang kalidad, kanang fresh when it comes to mga karne, mga isda, mga utanon. Freshness means here how much a fish or fish product has spoiled when held in the wet state. When applied to frozen or canned fish, it means freshness of the fish before canning or freezing. Fish kept frozen for a long time may taste unpleasant because it develops of flavors in store, but these are not the same as those associated with stale, wet fish. In general, the sensory method of assessing freshness is the best at present for quality control purposes. As fish spoils, its smell, taste, appearance, and feel go through the characteristic and well-defined stages that trained experts or experienced staff can consistently recognize. It is convenient to attach a number of score to each stage so that the assessor can award appropriate score to each fish or batch of fish. So naa diri sa akong example, 5 signs that fish is fresh. Tara. Eyes are full, shiny, and bright. Tara. Smells fresh and mildly briny. So pag simot mo makafeel ka nga Kuan. Amoy, kuan pa, fresh. Firm and elastic to the touch. Pag hikap nimo ana, di na, pag ana nimo ana, mura pa na og firm pa, di pag ana nimo dili madubok, pag ana nimo sakto pa, pag hikap nimo. Gills are moist and brightly red in color, so ang iyang hasang is pula pa. Kuan pa nimo identify pa nimo, wow, fresh pa kaayo siya. Then skin and scales are metallic like, so kanang iya ang kuan is di pa kuspaw ba. Pero if mara to. So, thank you and Godspeed. That's all, ma'am. Salamat.